I knew the air was poisoned the moment Greg called me kiddo. I'm 49, have two herniated discs, and carry more vendor logins in my brain than Lindsay's entire MBA cohort combined. But sure, kiddo. That morning, he leaned on my cubicle wall like he was auditioning for a toothpaste commercial, grinning like he just discovered fire. Hey, Margaret, stellar work on the transition roadmap, he chirped. Lindsay's a natural. Just handle the handoff for me, would ya? That was my first clue this was a firing in sheep's clothing. I'd been with Brimley Systems for 13 years. Not one of those flashy culture types with standing desk yoga balls and self-branded hoodies. I was the glue, the paperclip, the human firewall keeping our cloud operations duct-taped together through mergers, outages, and Greg's seasonal hiring benders. I built the vendor stack from scratch, one caffeine-fueled negotiation at a time. Legal didn't understand half of what I embedded in those contracts, but they trusted me because things worked. Until that Monday. Greg's daughter Lindsay had graduated 2 weeks ago, some overpriced business school in Arizona that bragged about its espresso bar more than its curriculum. Her only experience in cloud infrastructure was ordering extra iCloud storage for her Chihuahua's Instagram account. Now she was transition lead, my replacement. Greg clapped me on the shoulder like we were fishing buddies. You'll still be involved, of course. A week or two of knowledge transfer, and then we'll get you sorted. Sorted like I was a misfiled receipt. And here's the part where I break character for a split second, just long enough to say this. If you're listening and enjoying this mess unfold, and I promise it gets worse before it gets better, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Maybe even subscribe. 90% of folks don't, and it's free, unlike Lindsay's consulting rates. It means the world to the team making sure stories like mine get told. Now, back to the moment I realized I was about to be booted from the system I practically built with my own two hands and a decade of unpaid overtime. Greg handed me a folder labeled Transition Assets. Inside, a printout of a Slack thread Lindsay had written, suggesting we replatform our middleware stack for multi-tenant elasticity. It was buzzword soup, not even seasoned. Just raw jargon dumped on a plate. I blinked at it. Greg was already halfway out the door, calling over his shoulder, "Lindsay will book some time with you. Pick your brain before you go." "Appreciate you, kiddo." The door clicked shut behind him, and I stared at the wall. That hollow fluorescent hum hit different when you realize you've just been erased by nepotism wrapped in lipstick. I didn't cry, didn't throw anything. I've seen better women than me sob into their steering wheels after this exact script. I just stood up, walked to the filing cabinet under my desk, and pulled out the one folder I kept under lock and key, MVA final signed copy. The master vendor agreement. Took me 9 months to negotiate. 9 months. The vendor tried to squeeze us on renewal pricing, then changed their provisioning model mid-negotiation, and finally tried to move our data to a shared East Coast cluster without telling us. I dragged their CCO through regulatory hell, line by line, until we reached a contract that guaranteed us full control if and only if one condition was met: continuity of the designated officer. A little clause on page 47, hidden in the tall grass of indemnity language, right before the boilerplate on arbitration. All service provision is contingent upon the continued employment of the designated officer, as named in Appendix B. I opened Appendix B, stared at the name typed neatly beside designated officer. Margaret J. Hill. I smiled. No, I didn't plot revenge. I'm not a villain. I didn't even tell a soul. I printed one fresh copy, stuck a yellow sticky note on it, sure to review page 47, Appendix B, and placed it dead center on Lindsay's pristine new desk. Then I gathered my things: coffee mug, backup charger, one dying succulent. I walked past HR with the kind of calm that scares people. They avoided my eyes like I had a terminal illness they might catch if we made contact. My last stop was the server room. Just to say goodbye, I rested my hand on the cabinet that held the backup keys to the production stack and whispered, "Good luck, old girl." Then I left. No email, no farewell party, no cake, and certainly no one noticing the fire I'd just left smoldering in the form of one very legal, very binding, very overlooked clause. You ever see a baby bird fall out of the nest and try to fly with wet feathers and pure delusion? That was Lindsay on day one. I mean, like she was shooting a promo for her own LinkedIn success story, all oversized blazer and leadership energy. Her voice echoed through the bullpen before she even hit the Wi-Fi. "Morning, team. Let's crush some silos today." I crushed an antacid in my palm and kept my mouth shut. The official announcement came at 10:04 a.m. Greg summoned the team to the main conference room like we were about to witness the second coming of Steve Jobs. He cleared his throat like he was prepping for Shakespeare. "I want to formally introduce Lindsay Halston," he beamed. "She'll be taking over transition management as part of our modernization push." Fresh eyes, fresh ideas, fresh nepotism, you mean? The room gave a polite round of golf claps, a few confused glances my way. Greg didn't look at me, not once. Just steamrolled through his script like a man trying to run over his own guilt. And Margaret, he hesitated for half a second, then plowed forward, has graciously agreed to help with the handoff before she moves on to other opportunities. Graciously agreed, my ass. HR had already emailed me a transition offboarding timeline that morning, subject line, closure plan Margaret Hill. Cold as a morgue drawer. They didn't even give me time to finish my coffee, just handed me one of those flimsy cardboard boxes like I was being evicted from my own competence. Not even a branded pen to keep. Just my mug, my backup charger, and a hard knot in my chest. And then it arrived. The cherry on top of this flaming dumpster sundae. An email from Lindsay. Subject, transition fun, smiling face with smiling eyes body. Hey Margaret, so excited to work with you before you leave. Looking forward to picking your brain light bulb before you head out. Let's get lunch or something. Besties, Lindsay kiss mark, she might as well have mailed me a glitter bomb filled with condescension. Picking my brain like I was a buffet. Like 13 years of survival, negotiation, and firefighting were just a Pinterest board she could skim. I didn't reply. Instead, I walked to the printer. Opened the MVA file from my flash drive. Yes, I kept a local copy, because I'm not an idiot, and printed exactly one page, the signature sheet. Appendix B, designated officer. I highlighted the clause in yellow, slipped it into a clean folder, no staple, no wrinkles, just precision. Then I printed one more copy of the entire master vendor agreement, 87 pages, bound it with a fat black clip and added the same sticky note as before. Be sure to review page 47, Appendix B. I placed it gently in the center of Lindsay's spotless desk, right next to a branded water bottle she hadn't even unwrapped yet. And let me tell you, there's a special kind of restraint in silence. In not responding. In letting a machine run itself off a cliff because its new operator didn't bother to read the manual. Later that day, I overheard Lindsay in the break room talking to Greg. Hey, quick question, she giggled. What's a designated officer? Is that like someone from the vendor? Greg's voice, low and bored, nah, legal crap. Ignore it, probably just something Margaret baked into one of her overkill clauses. We'll clean that stuff up later. They laughed together, like this was all just a quirky little sitcom subplot. And me, I was already home, bare feet, coffee in hand, watching my email refresh. A new message pinged, subject line, outstanding action required officer verification. Vendor reminder number 1. I read it, flagged it. Then opened my contingencies folder again and double-checked the clause just to feel the weight of it. All services are contingent upon the continued employment of the designated officer, my name. My clause, my time bomb, tick, tick, tick. I didn't slam the door. I didn't cry in the stairwell. I didn't pull a Norma Ray and stand on the break room table holding up the MVA like it was the 10 Commandments. I just walked, box in hand, footsteps steady, HR watching me from behind their fake politeness force field like I was carrying a live grenade in a shoebox. Let us know if you need anything, the HR rep said, voice sweet as printer toner. Her badge said Chloe, but her eyes said liability risk. I nodded once, didn't break stride, left the master vendor agreement on Lindsay's desk like a farewell card no one would open until it was far too late. The sticky note read, be sure to review page 47, Appendix B, blue ink, all caps, neat handwriting. It felt like placing a single match beside a can of gasoline, not malicious, just informative. No one followed me, no one clapped, no surprise thank you cupcakes from procurement. I took the side elevator, rode it down past the floors where the real decisions got made, and stepped into the parking lot with the kind of quiet dignity usually reserved for retired generals and dogs returning from war. The sun was too bright for Monday. I tossed the box in the backseat of my Honda, sat behind the wheel for a minute, and let my breath catch up to my body. 13 years gone just like that, because Greg wanted to mentor his daughter, because legacy means nothing when nepotism brings cupcakes. I didn't text anyone, not my sister, not Carol from compliance. Not even Darnell in IT, who once stayed on a call with me until 2 a.m. to keep our failover servers alive during a thunderstorm. They'd find out soon enough. Instead, I drove home. Not fast, not slow, just with purpose. When I walked through my front door, the smell of cinnamon and dust hit me like it always does. I dropped the box by the bookshelf, peeled off my shoes, and padded to the spare bedroom, my quiet war room. Opened the closet, reached for the box labeled contingencies. Inside, printed contracts annotated in red pen, flash drives, backup logs, one manila folder labeled MVA executed copy. I opened it, page 47. Clause 14.6c. All service provision is contingent upon the continued employment of the designated officer as named in Appendix B. Appendix B, Margaret J. Hill, my name, in ink. Under 3 executive signatures, including Greg's. See, the vendor we used, Bright Layer Cloud, had a reputation for aggressive terms. They liked auto-renewals, surprise maintenance fees, and data lock-ins. I didn't just push back, I buried landmines. That clause was my insurance. Continuity clause. If I got run over by a bus, no problem. But if they fired me without transitioning that role in writing, boom. Total service halt, and nobody had read it. Not Greg, not legal. Certainly not Lindsay, who probably thought Appendix B was a Pilates move. I closed the folder and smiled, not a smirk, not a grin, just a small upturn at the corners. The kind of smile you give when the scales balance themselves. I made a cup of tea, opened my laptop. Logged into the admin panel for Bright Layer, clicked View Activity. There it was, 2 vendor emails had already gone unread. A third had just been sent. Subject line, urgent, officer verification window closing in 18 hours. Oh, Lindsay, you didn't even know the house you moved into had a gas leak. I marked the email unread, didn't forward it, didn't flag it, just left it alone. Then I leaned back, let the chair creak beneath me, and exhaled the weight of 13 years in one long breath. This wasn't revenge. This was gravity. What goes up must come down, and what gets handed to someone unqualified and ungrateful eventually crashes. Page 47 was just the beginning. Lindsay hit the ground running like a toddler on espresso. Her first team-wide email had more exclamation points than a crime scene witness statement. Excited to innovate, let's disrupt some silos and get alignment across verticals. Party popper, I wasn't on the thread, of course. I only saw it because Darnell from IT forwarded it with the subject line. What in God's name is a vertical snackable deliverable? She brought donuts on Monday. Took selfies in front of the Brimley Systems logo. Started a Slack channel called #Lynn's Leadership, where she posted motivational quotes in Canva fonts and kept tagging random engineers with "Hey bestie." Update? Sparkling heart day 1. She waltzed into DevOps like she owned the patents on JavaScript. Told them we'd be moving to a cloud-agnostic environment in Q3 and integrating seamless automation workflows with Bright Layer's new AI tool. The engineers just blinked at her. One of them, Raju, later told me, she thinks APIs are like apps you download. She'd pulled the Bright Layer brochure off their website and didn't realize half the features were in beta or only available under enterprise contracts we didn't hold. When Darnell gently explained that we couldn't even enable half of what she promised without rewriting the provisioning scripts, she gave him the same look you'd give a tax form written in Klingon. But the real show was what she didn't do. Tuesday morning, Bright Layer's system fired off another reminder. Subject, urgent action required, verification of designated officer body. As per clause 14.6c of your agreement, please confirm continued employment of designated officer or submit replacement credentials within 48 hours. She opened the email, read it, then dragged it to trash. A few hours later, she posted on #Lynn's Leadership. Just deleted like 300 emails. Inbox 0 feels so good. Greg, meanwhile, was busy polishing the nepotism like a bowling trophy. Scheduled an all-hands on Wednesday. Let's celebrate new beginnings, he said. Brimley is evolving and Lindsay's going to help us step into a bold future. No mention of me, no thank you, not even a footnote in the meeting agenda. 13 years, reduced to vacuum space. Lindsay stood next to him during the announcement, beaming like a mall Santa. She waved. Said, "Hey everyone, I'm here to learn from you. I don't have all the answers yet, but I do have passion." She made little heart hands. Someone in sales clapped. Everyone else stared. Back at her desk, the second reminder sat unopened. Timestamp, Wednesday, 2:06 p.m. Subject, final warning, verification window expires in 24 hours, still no action taken. But don't worry, she had time to film a TikTok. Captioned, first week as a tech exec briefcase nail, wish me luck? I only know because Raju sent me the link. In the background, the MVA I left her was visible. Still unopened. Still with the sticky note, be sure to review page 47, Appendix B. The clock was ticking. Back in my quiet little office/nest, I watched the dashboard on Bright Layer's portal like I was monitoring a patient in the ICU. System status, green. All modules operational. For now, I refreshed the page. 23 hours, 42 minutes left. One more email queued. After that, hard failover to inactive. It was all there, buried in the MVA's legal language, triggered automatically if the designated officer's employment couldn't be confirmed within the prescribed window. Greg didn't know. Legal hadn't looked. Lindsay thought she could just swipe away responsibility like an Instagram notification. And the servers were just waiting for the countdown to hit 0. Tick tick, Monday morning, 9:01 a.m. That was the moment the lights went out, not literally but spiritually. On the dot, Brimley Systems' entire digital nervous system collapsed like a lung in a collapsing mine. Servers dead, billing portal gone. Internal dashboards 404 errors across the board. Vendor APIs unresponsive. Admin access revoked. User credentials invalid. Slack still working, which just made it worse. Because within 60 seconds, Slack turned into a digital hellscape of panic and profanity. Engineering, anyone else getting auth error 147 on the VM clusters? Sales, client dashboard is down. Who touched production? Billing ops, can't access Stripe panel. Can't run payroll. Can't breathe. Random, so anyone want to get lunch? Emergency mode triggered before Greg even finished his morning muffin. He burst out of his office like he was auditioning for Grey's Anatomy, Cloud Edition. People, let's all calm down. It's just a back-end hiccup, some routine outage. I'll get on with Bright Layer. Only problem, he couldn't. Their support panel had locked him out. The root admin credentials, my credentials, been automatically suspended at the same moment the system detected I was no longer employed. Over in IT, Darnell was pale and sweating. We can't override it, he said to no one in particular. The provisioning lock is hard-coded. It's not a bug, it's a legal trigger. It executed a service auto-terminate. Greg blinked. That's not possible. What trigger? Raju swiveled around in his chair. Clause 14.6c, I think. It's in the MVA. Something about the designated officer. Lindsay froze mid-sip of her oat milk cold brew. What's a designated officer? Silence. You could have heard a pin drop, or in this case, the distant, echoing sound of 13 years of institutional memory getting flushed down the corporate toilet. Legal joined the Zoom at 9:17 a.m. Monotone, confused, already sweating. We're reviewing the contract now. Please hold all escalation emails. Translation, we didn't read it either and we're scrambling. Greg paced the floor like a sitcom dad after finding out the family vacation budget was used on NFTs. We've had outages before, he said, more to himself than anyone. This is just another hiccup. We'll get Bright Layer on the line and no, Raju interrupted. You don't understand. We're locked out. This isn't just an outage. The platform executed a shutdown protocol, the kind that doesn't reverse until the clause is satisfied. Lindsay's face crumpled. But that's just paperwork. Isn't there like a customer service line? There is, Darnell said flatly. It now redirects to automated support, and we don't have an active contract anymore. Our last verified officer was Margaret. Greg turned slowly toward Lindsay. You did confirm that, right? The officer verification? She just blinked at him. I deleted those emails. I thought they were spam. The blood drained from Greg's face so fast I half expected a medical alert bracelet to chirp from his wrist. He opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. You what? I didn't know it was important. You told me to focus on the dashboard migration and I told you Greg started, then stopped. Looked around the room. Realized that every eye, every employee, every engineer, every intern was watching him, judging him. He had no one else to blame. The phones started ringing. Real, old-school landline phones in the shared conference area. Something that only ever happens when a system-wide emergency alert hits the wire and client reps start panicking. You know the tone. The this better be a fire tone. Calls from partners, from stakeholders, from enterprise clients whose platforms were tied to ours, whose invoices were due today, whose user data pipelines ran through our now-dead architecture. Greg tried to answer one, got halfway through the word hello before his voice cracked. Lindsay sat back down. She didn't cry, not exactly. But her expression, vacant, dazed, was the look of someone who just realized they were driving the wrong way on a one-way street and had run out of gas. In front of a police station. Raju whispered, "We're dead." And somewhere, across town, sipping lukewarm coffee in her robe, Margaret refreshed the Bright Layer admin panel. Status, account suspended. Action required. Reinstate designated officer or renegotiate new agreement. Deadline passed. Fallout in progress. By 10 o'clock a.m., the conference room looked like a war room designed by people who didn't understand the war they were in. Legal was huddled around a printed contract like it was a cursed scroll. The CIO had joined via Zoom from her vacation in Aspen, still in ski gear. The CEO, Brian DeWitt, who rarely descended from his seventh-floor cathedral, was now in the flesh, unshaven and twitching, with a Bluetooth headset dangling from one ear and a blood pressure that could probably deflate tires. Everyone was talking, except Lindsay. She sat in the corner, shrinking into her chair like someone waiting for the teacher to call on her and praying for death instead. Greg stood at the whiteboard, rambling about redundancies and manual override protocols, sweating through his shirt like a TV preacher in tax season. And then legal, poor, sleep-deprived legal spoke. They didn't yell. They didn't even raise their voice. They just read word for word from the contract I'd left behind like a ticking metronome. Clause 14.6c. All services are contingent upon the employment of the designated officer listed in Appendix B. Termination of said officer without formal replacement voids all service-level guarantees and triggers automatic suspension of platform privileges, including administrative access, client data access, and all integration endpoints. The room froze. The CEO blinked. What the hell does that mean? Legal flipped to the back. Page 87, Appendix B. Read it aloud like a eulogy, designated officer, Margaret J. Hill. Someone let out a low whistle. The CIO muttered, Jesus Christ, like she just watched a toddler stick a fork in a toaster. Brian, still holding a half-eaten protein bar, lowered it slowly. You're telling me the entire platform was built on her name? Not quite, legal said carefully. It was built on the designation of her authority. The vendor agreement explicitly requires her continued employment unless a transition is certified in writing and acknowledged by the vendor. No such certification exists. Brian turned, so who signed this clause? Legal didn't answer immediately, just held up the contract and rotated it so everyone could see. Initials in the margin, next to the clause, neat, confident, GH. Brian stared. Greg. Greg actually took a step back, like the initials were radioactive. Okay, hold on, he said, hands raised like he was guiding in a plane. That clause was buried in legalese. Nobody reads appendix language like that. Margaret slipped that in, she negotiated it, legal interrupted, calm and factual, and you approved it, twice. Once an initial review and once during final sign-off. Then why didn't someone flag it? She did, legal said, voice growing thin. It's highlighted on the sticky note she left on the desk. The one sitting next to the unopened MVA. The one that says, quote, be sure to review page 47, Appendix B. Silence, the kind that rearranges careers. Greg's mouth opened and closed like a fish watching its aquarium filter break. Brian stepped forward, slow and dangerous. Let me get this straight. We terminated the one person who negotiated our most critical vendor agreement. We failed to notify the vendor of a successor. We ignored multiple emails. And we are now locked out of our own infrastructure because you, Greg, signed off on a continuity clause you didn't understand? Greg stammered. It's not like I meant for this to happen. It's just Margaret was, she didn't explain. Brian cut him off with a single raised hand, not a gesture. A judgment, stop. He turned to legal. What are our options? Legal flipped a page and sighed. 2. Reinstate Margaret as designated officer, or renegotiate a new contract from scratch which, considering our breach, will likely involve a full onboarding cycle, new provisioning terms, and increased rates. How long would that take? 3 weeks minimum, and that's if they're feeling generous. Greg looked like he might pass out. Lindsay still hadn't spoken. Her lip quivered once, then settled into the sort of blank stare reserved for people who realize they might be the villain and the punchline in someone else's story. Brian ran a hand down his face like he was trying to wipe off the entire day. Get her on the phone, he said. Margaret? Legal asked. No, Brian snapped. Mother Teresa. Of course, Margaret, but I didn't answer the first call. Let them sweat. Let them read the contract, finally. Let them sit in the wreckage of their own arrogance and realize they had built their digital kingdom on the back of a woman they didn't bother to thank or even understand. The email arrived at exactly 11:14 a.m. The subject line, consultation request urgent platform issue polite. Sterile, like it had been exorcised of any whiff of accountability. The body was short, barely 2 paragraphs, probably ripped from some internal damage control playbook. Dear Margaret, we hope this message finds you well. Given your extensive knowledge of Brimley's infrastructure and existing vendor relationships, I'd like to explore the possibility of a short-term consultation arrangement to assist with an ongoing technical issue related to the Bright Layer platform. Please let us know if you're available to discuss this opportunity at your earliest convenience. Warm regards, Emma, executive assistant to Greg Halston. I stared at it for a full minute, sipping lukewarm coffee with 2 pink sweetened lows dissolved into it like bitter little lies. No apology. No acknowledgement, not even a reference to the situation. Just technical issue, like someone saying their house is a little smoky after they napalmed their own kitchen. There was a part of me, some long-buried, approval-starved corner of my brain, that wanted to feel vindicated. That wanted to crow about how it all came crashing down the second I walked out the door. But I'd already buried that part years ago, right next to my tolerance for being called kiddo and the line item on my resume where I used to list team player. So I opened a blank reply and typed, Hi Emma, attached are my current consulting rates and availability. Please note that I only work through escrow. Terms are non-negotiable, and full payment is required in advance for reactivation steps to be provided. Best, Margaret J. Hill. Then I attached the PDF. Margaret J. Hill rate sheetfall 25. PDF $275/HR standard $375/HR emergency rate. Applies. $7,500 retainer required for engagements involving high-risk platform restoration. No emojis. No smiley faces, just black text on a white page. I hit send and leaned back. Somewhere inside Brimley, panic was turning into strategy. Or at least whatever counts for strategy when the ship is already halfway sunk and your captain is blaming the iceberg for being pointy. According to what Raju would later tell me over drinks, bless his gossipy heart, it was Lindsay who suggested they reach out. Apparently she'd gone pale after reading the clause, opened her laptop, and whispered, would she even take our call? Greg had scoffed. She's probably too proud. But he hadn't said no. He just nodded, silent, humiliated, like a kid caught cheating on a test written by his own mother. While I waited, I pulled up Bright Layer's admin portal again, still offline, still flashing that soft red alert service suspended, awaiting designated officer reinstatement. I clicked on the logs, watched the timestamps update in real time. They tried 3 times to access backend modules. Denied. They tried to initiate provisioning bypass. Denied. They'd even attempted to reassign the officer role. System flagged it as unauthorized, must be performed by active due. It was beautiful, not because it was broken, but because it was clean. It worked exactly as I designed it. Ironclad logic built into a platform full of people who treated logic like a mood board. By noon, Emma replied, Hi Margaret, thank you for your prompt response. We've reviewed your terms and are prepared to proceed with the emergency rate and retainer. Please find the escrow transfer confirmation attached. Let us know next steps at your convenience. Warm regards, Emma. The retainer hit my account at 12:16 p.m. They didn't ask for a discount. They didn't push back on the price, because by now they knew exactly what my silence was worth. I started drafting the reactivation plan, step by step, not fast, not slow, just precise. I was no longer their employee. I was the last chance they had to breathe. The emergency Zoom opened with a silent grid of tension. Faces half-lit by desk lamps, all hunched like students caught plagiarizing during finals. Brian, the CEO, looked like he'd aged 10 years since Friday. Legal sat stiffly in one corner of the screen. The CIO was in her car, hot-spotting from what appeared to be a Whole Foods parking lot. And there, like a smudge of regret at the bottom of the screen, sat Lindsay, shoulders curled inward, eyes red-rimmed, staring just below the camera. I didn't speak first. I let them stew in the void for a full 15 seconds. Zoom silence is a spiritual weapon when wielded properly. Good afternoon, I said finally, voice flat and clinical. I've received confirmation of escrow deposit. We may proceed. Brian gave a weary nod. Thank you, Margaret. We appreciate your flexibility. I didn't respond to that. Flexibility implies I bent. I quoted, they paid. Greg was off camera for the first few minutes. When he finally slunk into frame, he looked like he'd crawled through his own LinkedIn profile head first. Hair disheveled, tie loosened, pride shattered. Before we begin, I said I want to be clear. Service reactivation cannot occur without one of two things. Either I am reinstated as the designated officer, or a new contract is negotiated and accepted by Bright Layer. The latter will take approximately 3 to 4 weeks, during which the platform will remain suspended. Lindsay made a soft noise like a balloon deflating through a pinhole. Brian leaned forward. We're prepared to reinstate you. Title and status as before. Effective immediately. No, I replied. Brian blinked. No, I'm not returning as director. I am acting as transition consultant with binding operational authority. I report to no one. No internal systems access beyond what's needed to fulfill restoration. You will not list me in internal org charts. This is a one-way bridge, a beat, then another. Legal cleared their throat. That's acceptable. Brian's jaw tightened. Fine. Greg opened his mouth, probably to offer some watered-down apology he crafted during his morning panic attack. Margaret, listen. I held up one hand, palm out. Not rude, just final. Greg, I said coolly, this meeting is not about your feelings. He shut up, bless him for finally learning a skill. I pulled up a screen share, walked them through the restoration sequence step by step, like a kindergarten teacher with a class of concussed pigeons. Provisioning reset tokens sent to my private Bright Layer endpoint. Reauthentication of admin access through my 2FA key only. Session override script triggered from the legacy dashboard backup I kept. Yes, the one no one bothered to decommission. API key cascade rebuild final unlock. Each step came with timestamps, verification logs, and a polite pause while I confirmed their acknowledgement. Lindsay didn't speak. At one point, she muted herself and looked like she might cry. I didn't feel bad. Not because I enjoy pain, but because this was a lesson bought and paid for in fire. At 1:27 p.m., I completed the final override. Systems reactivated, dashboards online, client portals functional, logs stable, everything humming like it never even stopped because I'd built it that way. Brian exhaled so hard it sounded like wind through a broken vent. It's done? Yes, I said, and your internal architecture has been returned to a stable state. You'll receive my full report and invoice by end of day. Greg finally found his voice again. Margaret, I was wrong. You deserve better. I didn't look at him. Just paused the screen share, closed the terminal, removed my earbuds, and then, staring into the camera with the clarity of a scalpel sliding through arrogance, I said, this was not about what I deserved. It was about what you failed to understand. Then I ended the call. At 1:29 p.m., the systems lit up like a Christmas miracle in July. Payroll ticked back online. Client portals pinged with restored access. Logs smoothed out like a rebooted heart monitor. The silence that followed wasn't stunned, it was sacred. For 8 minutes, they had hovered on the edge of operational death. Now they were back, not because of some leadership pivot, not because of Greg's damage control, and sure as hell not because Lindsay was learning the ropes. They were back because I said so. In the war room, cheers broke out. Real cheers. The kind of relief-laced shouting that happens when people realize they still have jobs, still have clients, still have a Monday to salvage. Engineers pumped their fists. The CIO visibly relaxed in her SUV. Someone actually clapped. It echoed weirdly in the Zoom call, like an ovation in a graveyard. Brian turned to Greg with the slow-motion dread of a man unwrapping a foreclosure notice. You didn't read what you signed, he said, voice low. Greg didn't respond. There wasn't a rebuttal to that. He looked down at his keyboard like it might somehow spell-check his decisions. You could see the full horror dawning in his face. 13 years of foundational infrastructure signed away with a careless flick of a pen, and the arrogance to call it streamlining. In the corner, Lindsay was frozen, not crying, not protesting, just still, like a mannequin propped up at the scene of a crime she didn't understand but knew she'd committed. I didn't linger. I didn't give a speech. My job was done. Systems were up, the invoice had been prepped, and the escrow release notice was already in their inbox. But I did say one thing before I left. One last scalpel slid in without force. I stood up. adjusted my headset, looked squarely into the camera at all of them. Brian, legal, the engineers, Lindsay, Greg, and I said, funny thing about transitions, they require continuity, not nepotism. Then I hit leave meeting. No mic drop, no cinematic fade out. Just me in my robe in my office, closing a laptop with the calm of someone who'd finally stepped out of a storm she'd spent years learning to predict. They didn't call back. They wouldn't, because some lessons don't come with second chances, and some exits are meant to stay closed. Thanks for watching, you cubicle warriors. Hit that subscribe button. Unless you're my old boss, then you're on your own. Revenge of the coffee pot strikes again.